knows it was meant for.
Well, we'll get started, and hopefully Sean will be here shortly.
How was the mayor?
She killed her cat yet?
I know, all I know is I just got the text, I'm like, oh, I'm a little
She told me
dizzy,
that
and I'm
on
like,
Sunday, I was like, I'm not taking your cat.
it's like, let me know if you need anything. Oh, jeez, little lady. So,
She didn't go to the hospital.
no, I believe she's still at home, and everything's good. I don't know if you talked to her
Yeah,
recently.
she,
So, she seems to be all right, so. I just think she's fighting an inner ear infection too, I think. So, she's not doing great. So, anyway, so I'll be the fearless leader for tonight. We've got a few things to go over. First things is Jesse had brought up the Stuff the Van week, and there was a proclamation for that. Are you interested in doing that, Jesse?
Sure.
It's Monday from 9 or 10.
Oh,
I
next
guess.
Monday? I
Yeah,
can't do it next
you can't do it next week. Okay. Anybody interested in doing that? Stuff the van for what's the organization, Jesse?
I believe it's Toys for Tots, maybe?
like the 11th.
Sorry, I don't know.
Toy Drive. Yes, it's a toy drive, sponsored by Wyoming Food for Thought and Town Square. So
When is it and where?
it's at Walmart on the east side. It's 9 or 10 is what it said on the list here.
Which day?
The 11th. I'm sorry, Monday the 11th. Let me check my schedule. See.
Bob wants to do it.
I have staff meeting that morning.
You're gonna be banished to the netherworld.
Do some people want to think about it? We'll come back to that. So think about it. December 11th, 9 or 10, and Jamie Purcell's the contact person. If need be, I can try to move my staff meeting around a little bit. So we can do that. You want to go over a couple things?
I'd be happy to if you don't mind.
Yep. Go ahead.
If I could real quick, if I could borrow this for a second.
Certainly.
We have put these little scheduling options in front of you with regard to the tours of the Plains buildings and so forth. Please be aware that a couple of these times, most notably the ones on December 6th, would potentially conflict with your interest in attending the Region 4 WAM meeting. And so be mindful of that as you consider this and consider your schedule and so forth. I realize some of you may not have an option to adjust your schedules to accommodate both, but just be mindful of the fact that that is a conflict, and we only anticipate the tour of taking a half hour, so that shouldn't put you out of contention totally for the regional meeting if you can do both, or if your schedule requires you to do both. So be aware of that if we could. A couple items that we wanted to get your direction on, informal direction. We are working on a financial policy that we would like to bring to you in more detailed nature and so forth. One of the fundamental pieces of that financial policy will be with respect to general fund reserves. And if you recall, we had the opportunity to go over with you what we'd like to do with the general fund reserves, wherein basically we'd like to move the policy direction from 60 days to 120 days. You'll also note that previously, and probably previous councils and so forth, had established that policy to be at 180 days. We're asking that it be somewhere in the middle. More than 60, less than 180. 120 seems to be a nice middle spot. That would obligate, if you will, on an annual basis, somewhere in the neighborhood of $14 to $15 million as a backup, so to speak, for the operations of the general fund. And so we wanted to make sure you were comfortable with that, so because that's a primary feature of the policy that we will be putting together. And if that policy is a no-go, it'd be helpful to know that in advance.
WAM's policy was 60 roughly? Or their suggestion, it's not a policy, but a suggestion?
I think that they're more, if I may, Mr. Chairman, in the neighborhood of 90 days.
Okay.
We're proposing a little more stability than that would offer. When you look at communities from around the state, around the country, it's probably closer to 90 days as well. The volatility that we experience as an energy community, however, in my estimation, would suggest more.
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, good.
Oh, Jesse.
Quick question, would it be possible to piggyback off of that and just put in another policy of, you know, if we ever get to another point where we're going to buy a large piece of property, that council actually has the vision of what that property is going to do for the city of Casper and what we're going to use it for, just to answer that kind of why for the general public. And then we can give that to everybody to explain why we're buying, for instance, $3 million, like the Plains property, for example. What do you guys think of that?
Didn't we already buy that?
Yeah, we did, but for future council, you know, if they say, hey, we wanna buy this, you know, why are we buying it? What benefit is it going to have to the community? And, you know, what's the long-term goal of
Good.
buying this type of property?
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
I mean, if you're gonna reference that particular decision, we had 3 weeks to make that decision, which is not a reasonable amount of time to talk about long-term planning or usage. And so I wouldn't wanna tie the hands of the council in making a decision like the one we were essentially forced to make yesterday. Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jesse, here's the problem with that. I think it's a good idea, but I think that you can't really and shouldn't bind future councils.
It's not buying, it's just, hey, this is kind of the reasoning behind it. You can still do whatever you want, you know, just like this 120-day policy, you can still spend below that, that's, you know, not the issue, it's just what our goal is going to strive for that 120-day mark. Our goal is to strive to tell the community, if we're going to buy a piece of property, we have, you know, at least a goal in mind, as opposed to just going out and buying and waiting for something to happen.
So I would recommend draw something up and let's take a look at what, because I'm not really tracking it 100%. I like it, you can put it in writing or a resolution, that's what I'd like to see what it looks like. But I've been reviewing documents for cities and counties, and some of these time limits, I just think are unlawful. And I'll find that to the council as we go.
Go ahead, Bob. Oh, I'm sorry, Jesse. You're still talking. Go ahead.
I was just curious,
Hold on.
the
Oh, I'm
time
sorry,
limits for the
Jesse.
120-day reserve thing?
I don't know if that
Or-
would be,
okay.
but if you're trying to bind other councils, there's a lot of law that says that's not gonna work.
It's just, yeah, okay.
This agreement we have with the Joint Powers Board is in perpetuity, it's clearly illegal. It means that it's forever. You can't do that to a city council,
Okay.
or really any arm. But we've done it.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I guess I'd have some concerns with it because on occasion, during my tenure on council, we have had some property owners come to us and offer an exclusive deal, so to speak, at a reasonable price. And we've taken advantage of that. And you just don't know when these opportunities are gonna come up. I mean, I can think of a few places, which I won't name, that if somebody decides they want to get out of the business and wants to make us a reasonable deal on the property, it would make a good addition to our portfolio, if you will.
Okay.
And granted, it has some speculation involved in it, but I'd be a little hesitant to have something in writing that says you don't want to take advantage of a good deal if it comes up. So
Chris?
that would be my only objection.
I think I'm understanding where Jesse's coming from, and I don't think no matter how quick it comes up or how fast the turnaround has to be, that if you can't explain well, at least what an idea is, you shouldn't buy something. I don't know how in-depth you're talking about doing it, but this one, hey, we have an opportunity to get this at this prime location. I suspect you guys were banding around some ideas
Oh,
of
of
what you
course,
had.
we've made
So-
several statements about potential uses that we thought would be attractive long-term things for the city. We just weren't able to say this is the plan.
So is there enough support to have Jesse move forward with Jesse's proposal?
I'd like to see it.
Probably not enough background right now.
So do you want
It's
to,
probably
if
something
you
we
want to put
talk
something
about.
together, Jesse,
Yeah, I'll do that.
that'd be great for more of us to
Something
look at.
together,
It's basically like a non-binding, binding agreement.
Yeah.
Here's what we think.
A statement of declaration, this is what we plan or think we might do.
Yeah.
I think it's a great concept, it's just not always realistic, in my experience.
Great, thanks, Jesse.
One more thing, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. As we have discussed and talked about, we are working towards putting together a legislative agenda that council would hopefully adopt. And that is for the purpose of giving the marching orders, if you will, to our legislative delegation as they go to Cheyenne here in the coming months. One of those items that we would ask for your support of is with respect to this pivotal legislation that I think you have in front of you. That, oh, thank you. It's coming in front of you here. Thank you, Julie. And you should have seen in your packets over the weekend as it relates to extraterritorial jurisdiction. The bottom line is the legislation that you're seeing in front of you requests the legislature to remove 100% cities and towns' ability to plan outside the limits of the respective city. And so urban growth boundary areas and those kinds of things, particularly from a planning perspective, would become relatively useless without legislation that we currently have in the books, so to speak. The draft that you see in front of you eliminates all of that. It reduces cities and towns' ability to grow and develop and to even plan outside of their borders to nothing. And so my request to each of you is to look at that legislation, read it over, and I'm hoping that you will support a position of non-support, if you will, of this concept.
Is there a bill or an interest in a bill to allow people outside the city limits to vote in municipal elections? Because that would be my only hang up with this. You're enforcing city rules on a non-city entity, which gives them the argument that we should be able to vote in elections. I don't agree with that.
You know, Carter.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, there certainly has been legislation in the past that would suggest that those who don't live in the city be given the opportunity to vote in municipal elections and those kinds of things. The weaknesses that I've seen, at least with respect to previous drafts, is that it isn't clear as to where and who and within what distance to the municipality. And so in my estimation, those kinds of drafts have been inappropriate and not good, particularly for those who live within the city that pay water bills and property taxes and those kinds of things. So I think there may be a middle ground with respect to an idea of that nature, and we are certainly trying to find a middle ground with respect to ideas of this nature as well. And so this legislation represents zero middle ground and is punitive to cities and towns. And so that's the primary reason why I'm asking for your support against this draft. There may be others that come out that represent a better, more negotiable position between both cities and counties.
And then Dallas.
Thank you, Your Honor. That will be a major topic tomorrow at the Region 4 meeting as far as explaining the pros and cons, some of the ramifications of this rollback, some of the actual events that have occurred with respect to the extraterritorial jurisdiction. Some of the problems have taken place that were very difficult to address, and this legislation would make some of those things even more difficult. So, but I think to hear the arguments and hear the stories really of what's happened in this area, because it's a friction point, and we need to have some rules in place.
Dallas.
Who actually goes to the legislature, Charlie, if you knows, and lobbies?
Well,
The actual person.
well, it's actually, we have a legislative leadership committee, and I'm a member of that committee. And a lot of times it depends on where is that hearing being held. And so the WAM staff will almost always travel to wherever the hearing is. But as we heard from Mr. Kaysen last week, what's really needed is people like us to show up. But you can't force anybody. We all have other lives to lead, and it's difficult to go to Saratoga or Sundance to appear at a hearing. But usually it is the WAM leadership and selected members who either live in the area or have a particular interest or availability. So it's very, I guess you'd say, random in terms of who actually testifies. What we try to do is make sure that as a group we're speaking with one voice.
So now let me just add a few words said, I thought that's probably what he was gonna say. But I keep saying, we need our own lobbyist. A person who takes what we know, we support down there and deals with it. Because this other thing is too fragmented. And this is, I don't think this will ever get passed anyway, but we need, if the stuff that we think is important, we should have our own person. And you can watch Report to Wyoming this coming weekend, where Carter up here is a guest. And we talk a little bit about WHAM and all of that, but the issue is leaving it up to somebody else to decide our fate. I just really don't think that's in our best interest.
I'd argue that Charlie's our lobbyist.
I thought Charlie would be a great lobbyist. You gotta pay him to do it. And if he.
I meant like he's our WHAM
No,
representative.
I know, but if you're saying, Charlie, leave your job and go down to Cheyenne and do this, then, you know, we need lobbyists. I don't know whether we can work that out with him, but I'd be just tickled if he said he'd do it.
How much doesn't he think?
Might be able to work something out.
I guarantee you that.
I think our standard, if I may, Your Honor, I think our standard practice with a suggestion like that is to see if there's sufficient support amongst council to put that on a work session agenda. I would say no, but I don't know if there's a group that would like to put that on the agenda.
Put on having lobbyists.
The issue of having to.
Is there enough, does anybody want to talk about that in a future work
If you
session?
want things passed at the legislature, vote for it. If you don't vote for it. Because you're not gonna get it with the WHAM doing it. And you're not gonna get it with the guy running WHAM right now. My guess is, you know, his voice is listened.
Did you want to say something? Yeah, Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I think that having the conversation is certainly something that council ought to consider. What I would say though, despite what council does with hiring a lobbyist or not hiring a lobbyist outside of WHAM, the most effective tool that councils have is council people in terms of reaching out to the various delegates on our Natrona County delegation. And so what we're trying to do, and hopefully we can do, is, and that's a dynamic process too, is equip you with information that would be hopefully very factual and helpful and informative, so that when it comes time to, you know, the opportunities that you have on an individual basis to visit with our delegates, you can say with a position of authority and knowledge to say, we really need your help here. And that's what the legislative agenda, I think, is most effective at doing. So that's why we have these little vignettes, if you will, of information pertaining to legislative issues that are on our near horizon.
If I might, going back a number of years when I was in the mining business and we were always fighting tax issues with the state, it became pretty clear when you got in committee hearings, well, we did have our own lobbyist for our company. We also supported the mining association. And on occasion, our position wasn't supported by the mining association, and it made us look really bad. And we were less effective with our own lobbyist than we were with having people come from our respective accounting departments, respective legal departments, and actually go and provide testimony at hearings. They listen to that, but a paid lobbyist is just one step removed. But if you have a group that represents the whole thing, as the mining association is a pretty effective group, and by far the most effective group is the teachers. But they take that with a grain of salt if it's the professional lobbyist. But if you have people, this group, come and talk to them, that by far I think is more influential than having a paid lobbyist. But that's just my experience.
Chris and Charlie.
We're discussing it. Let's put it on a work session.
That's exactly what I was saying.
There you go.
But is there sufficient support to put it on the work session?
Call the question.
I think so, good. So, we'll put that on a work session.
Yes.
If you don't do something like that, just
Good deal. Thank you. Anything else?
Just a real quick item, not an item even. We've given you a couple spreadsheets that represents the two perspectives pertaining to consensus funding. Many of you are aware that the county exercised their veto ability pertaining to consensus, and the city's proposal, if you will, was voted down. And so what you have in front of you is the county proposal as it remains pursuant to their meeting last week, I believe it was, and the city's proposal pursuant to your direction of a couple weeks ago. And so it is off consent tonight. You can certainly use this information as departure points, if you will, for the discussion this evening. But we will need some direction pursuant to the breakfast that we have tomorrow and the eventual application that hopefully will be sent down to Cheyenne.
Charlie, really quick too, before you go, so I know you were at the last meeting for that. If you were interested in coming to that mayor commissioner meeting.
I think, well, we can talk about that.
Okay.
After the meeting, but my question is, when you say the county exercised their right to the official meeting, was that actually done?
The rules governing the consensus program, Mr. Chairman, if I may, allow for the county, in every county commission, to veto is the only term I can come up with.
So did they contact you and say, we're proposing this alternative, or how does it formally work? We all have to sign it at some point, right?
We all have to sign it. The only two entities, however, that have veto authority in the Trona County are the county commission and this body here, mostly because of your oversight of the propensity of the urban population in this county. Casper has that unique role, the council. And so the county did exercise that. I've not seen that happen a lot, but that did happen. And to answer your question, Councilman, they made that decision in a meeting that was held a week ago. And the commissioners, the leadership, came over and visited with me
Afterwards.
following that meeting, correct?
If I may follow up, so they're against all of the proposals, the bridge in Evansville, the water line.
They did support the radio towers, and so that would be the only addition I would add to the county proposal. The radio towers were supported by the county commission, and so that would,
The proposal here has nothing but
Only their stuff.
their stuff.
right, no, it does include the radio towers, so that,
Does it include the bridge, in Evansville?
I thought it
It's
supported.
in the packet online, it says.
I believe, and I don't want to misspeak, but I believe that it does support the bridge, the road, and then there was a couple other things from the other municipalities.
yeah, I would agree. The water line, the road, and the
Well,
towers.
excuse me, that's right, the water line,
Yeah.
and the road and stuff.
One more follow-up, just
Yeah,
to understand the
bet.
process. So each entity has the right to exercise a line item veto?
So there's some confusion in that because there has been some thought that every every group in that has some type of veto power, but Carter, if I can speak for you,
Please.
knows. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak.
No,
for
no,
you.
no, that's okay.
But the problem with it is that they have done investigating with the state. The state said the only two that can give a veto are the counties.
The question is, veto the entire proposal
Oh,
or
the
line item veto?
Do you know that? I don't know that.
Each entity has, because that's what they're trying to do, is do a line item veto.
Mr. Chairman,
correct?
Councilman, they have the ability to veto whatever they'd like to veto.
Okay.
And so in this case, and I agree with what's been said, you basically take $1 million off of that bottom line, and that's what's left, if you will, in abeyance, because they did support the road, they did support the water line and the towers, which effectively is $1 million that they were willing to support over and above what's already been done, and that is the Hall of Justice project, and that's what's represented on your spreadsheet, what's actually been complete.
Chris.
Do they have a counter argument? Was there any information provided that?
It is to my knowledge that there's no counter other than saying that what is the leftovers at $800,000 roughly would go back into pot, if you will, and that it would be used. I'm going to talk about this on the floor, that we can private, but they're wanting to use that. Could be used for the
Conference center.
conference center because it was initially used for the conference center apparently. So they said that they would say put it back until we figure out what we're gonna do with the conference centers, what they was told to me
You're having a meeting about this in the morning?
at 7 o'clock.
So is it better to find out what you guys come up with in the morning before? What do you need from us right now?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Councilman, if council were prepared to say, yeah, we like the county's proposal and we'll support it, then that would give us that additional step under our belt to complete the application process and get the application to Cheyenne. On the other hand, if council were not comfortable with the commission's direction and would rather have, you know, X and Y project included as well, then that would at least give me direction to carry forward tomorrow with your representatives from your group here to continue the negotiations. And so that's really what I'm looking for tonight. If council doesn't want to take any action other than supporting the resolution you've already approved, you can do that too.
So Chris, basically what would be nice to have is, and I'll get to you, Charlie, and we need to get out there, guys.
It's 6 o'clock.
Basically what it would be nice if we go in there with saying we support or we don't support the resolution.
The county's resolution.
I'll say this on the floor, but there's a principle at stake here in terms of who's going to make decisions about,
The city of Casper.
that's right.
I don't support the county's.
And
I don't really support all our choices, but I don't support the county's.
And Chris, that's basically, it would be nice to go tomorrow to that and be like, council said, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
We've already, as we have already unanimously said,
Absolutely. I think you characterized it right on.
Who do you think wants these?
To me,
I now call the December 5th, 2017 regular council meeting to order. Could council members please denote your presence by depressing your yes switch? The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, excuse the absence of Mayor Keneen Humphreys.
So moved. Second?
Moved by Councilman Morgan, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. Please cast your vote.
Already
Oh, never mind.
haven't cleared it yet.
Are we all right? Oh, okay. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Thank you. Council meetings are also televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. Would you please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the November 21st, 2017 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on December 2nd and December 3rd, 2017.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Councilman Powell. Are there any corrections? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the December 5th, 2017 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Carter Napier.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Powell, seconded by Councilman Morgan. Abstentions? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Now we return to our bright spots in our community. So in the 10,000 feet view of Casper, a green ribbon stands out. That green ribbon is the North Platte River and its riparian area. This green ribbon is significant to Casper in the state of Wyoming. It provides drinking water to nearly all of Natrona County's residents, and 90% of Wyoming's wildlife relies on riparian areas with their wetlands as at least daily or seasonally. With less than 4% of Wyoming's land having a riparian area, Casper has a resource few communities in Wyoming have. 10 years ago, Casper City Council, city staff, and two Fly Foundations founded a North Platte River Restoration Project that named the Platte River Revival. The project goal is to foster a healthy and sustainable river system that is a catalyst for economic development and improved quality of life. The natural channel design method was chosen for its self-sustaining ability once restoration construction is complete. We, the Casper City Council, have chosen the Platte River Revival for our bright spot recognition tonight. Tonight we recognize and we thank all the volunteers who serve on the Advisory Committee, the Habitat Committee, the Volunteer Day Committee, as well as all the volunteers who come out on Volunteer Day year after year to complete the hands-on restoration work that is the hallmark of this great project. Here are a few of the milestones you each can call your own. Restored over 1 mile of river through construction, saved drinking water wells from eroding in the river, removed thousands of Russian olives, which is one of the greatest ecological feats of the project, created 8.5 net acres of wetland to filter polluted water for our streets, engaged over 5,000 volunteers to become involved in this great effort, saved Wyoming Boulevard from eroding into the river, named in Governor Meade's water strategy as a significant and exemplary project in the state, removed over 1 million pounds of debris from the river. So, as I address the following groups, would you please stand and stay standing? Many of you will be acknowledged for numerous roles. Would the members of the Advisory Committee stand. Members of the Habitat Committee stand. Members of the Volunteer Day Committee stand. Volunteers from the largest volunteer team for 10 years running, Hilltop National Bank. Let's have the volunteers from the team that has asked for the hardest assignment, hauling and loading cut Russian olives year after year for 10 years running, Jonah Bank and Nerd Gas. Please stand. The volunteers who led the after party for 7 years. That's a heck of a one to stand for. Lynette Boatwright and Tori Radosevich, please stand if they're here. Have the volunteers please stand from the group that brought their equipment, their knowledgeable people to remove hundreds of Russian olives and around the high-pressure natural gas line this year, Black Hills Energy. Please stand, volunteers who have left their John boats at work this year and put together the largest Russian olive removal plan in the 10-year history, brought their trucks and trailers and staff, and led the way, Plains Pipeline. Please stand. Let's have the volunteers who have recruited and checked in thousands of volunteers year after year, and this year hosted the after party. I don't know why I have that in my head. First Interstate Bank, please stand. Great. Let's have the volunteers who made the after party the best barbecue in town every year for the last 10 years, service industry representatives. Let's have the volunteers who have given the largest single contribution to the river construction project, which is $30,000 of concrete for the boat ramp and new pathway, Art Boatwright from Mobile Concrete. Let's have the volunteers who have given $247,000 in contribution to the project that they helped found, which is Two Fly Foundation. They're here tonight. Let's have the team that has participated in the most projects in 1 year, harvesting willows, planting willows again, and participating in Volunteer Day, the Kelly Walsh Key Club. And let's have the people who have, what's that? Oh, did I skip 13? Oh, see. Maybe I should have had it highlighted, Krista. Let's have the sponsors that give the dollars to make Volunteer Day and the project possible. The McMurray Foundation, Rocky Mountain Power, Woodward and Curran, and G.E. Johnson. And let's have the people who have given many hours of their time and talent to lead the groups of volunteers and keep volunteers safe year after year, our city staff. Thank you guys so much. Please take a seat. So obviously we want to thank you for your dedication on this project, because it would not have been possible without volunteers. Without volunteers, nothing can generally get done in this community, and we're very, very blessed to have that. I do have, where's Jolene at? Jolene, if you'd want to come up here, I have a certificate for you guys. So I think we firmly underestimate the amount of work that has gone into it in the last 10 years, right, Jolene? And the amount of manpower that has been put into that. And so we're very grateful for the hard work that you've done and the service that you've given to Casper and our community and nature. Thank you so much. Let's make sure I'm on the right stuff here. Thank you, guys.
You all leaving before we serve the beer?
You guys going to the after party, right? Thank you, guys. Okay, so please read the consent agenda titles.
Established December 19th, 2017 as the public hearing date for consideration for the following 4 items. Vacating a portion of South Forest Drive, new bar and grill liquor license number 10 for Marvin Peel Family doing business, LLC, doing business as The Tower located at 100 North Center Street. Transfer of ownership for retail liquor license number 5 owned by Lucky 95 LLC located at 134 North Center to Travis Taylor located at 134 North Center, and deposition of former Plains Furniture properties located between David Street and Ash Street in the Old Yellowstone District. Also establishing, February 20th, 2018 as a public hearing date for consideration of the annual renewal of all City of Casper liquor licenses.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilwoman Huckabee. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the consent ordinances on third reading by title only.
Item 7A1, an ordinance approving a zone change for lots 1 through 4, Thomas D. Ross, number 1 edition in the city of Casper, Wyoming. And item 7A2, an ordinance approving a zone change for lots 1 through 8 of the CPH edition in the city of Casper, Wyoming.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the consent ordinances just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Morgan, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote. Oh,
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
thank you. Please read the consent ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance approving the vacation of a portion of South Spruce Street.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the consent ordinance just read.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Huckabee, seconded by Councilman Walsh. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Council will now discuss the resolution for the lease agreement for management and operation of the Casper Speedway. Because this is not on the consent agenda, it will be open for discussion by council. Please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution authorizing a lease agreement with Ray and Faye Nash LLC for the operation of the Casper Speedway.
The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution just read.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Morgan. City manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. The opportunity that's before you this evening is to adopt by resolution a lease with Ray and Faye Nash LLC for the operation of the Casper Speedway. In September of this year, the city advertised for proposals, if you will, and sought interested parties and those who had that experience and capacity to operate speedways to submit their proposals and participate in interviews with staff with regard to selecting a proposed vendor that we would make recommendation to you to support on a formal basis to operate our speedway for the next 3 years. As a part of that process, we did receive 4 proposals. And as a result of the interviews that were conducted, Ray and Faye Nash LLC were selected for your formal consideration this evening.
Thank you. At this time, Ray Nash is asked to speak with us. Would you please come forward? If you state your name and address, please.
Ray Nash. I live at 4913 Eisenhower in Casper, Wyoming.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening. Excuse me. I would like to introduce you to my wife and some of our race families. They are just a few of the supporters that signed a petition which totaled 411 signatures in favor of us running the Casper Speedway. Our goal is to make Casper Speedway a place you will be proud of much as we are. A few of the events we have scheduled so far are a national flat track motorcycle race on May 19th and 20th. Their promoter is Jake Latimer from Oklahoma. June 15th and 16th, the Dwarf Car Special. Their promoter is Jerry Hunter out of Colorado. We are in the process of negotiating with several other promoters for additional specials. Our regular scheduled races will include the following classes: Mini Stock, Rocky Mountain Hardtop, Dwarf, IMCA Hobby Stock, Wysota Mod 4, Wysota Midwest Mod, IMCA A Mod, and late models. To include the fans will be our candy toss, a bike giveaway at every intermission, at every race. Santa's even going to show up this summer. It is planned that our 50-50 will be collected and our half will be donated to a nonprofit organization in this community. We would like to invite all of you and your families to join with our race families for an exciting evening of racing and fun. Again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Nash. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one question.
Mr. Laird?
Who has the fastest car of anybody in here? Is that true? Is it true? All right, thanks.
That's what we find out at the track, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nash. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Nash, you have a couple other questions here. Councilman Walsh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nash. How many, I don't know really the world of race car racing, how many race days do you have proposed, or is that the way the schedule?
We will race every Friday night, with exception, there's about 2 or 3 races that we don't race. We take off the 1 week. This is just something that has always been done at Casper. One Friday night of fair, we don't race, and there's one other Friday I think we don't race. There are several 2-day races that are planned throughout the season. It's just something that has always been done at Casper. It has been scheduled every Friday night for as long as I can remember.
Thank you. And is it, do you know, is this, your proposed schedule, is it more or less than what we've seen in the past?
Pardon?
Is it more or less race days than we've seen in the past?
They have always had about the same amount of races. The races have gone from, I've seen as many as 20 races in a season. What has happened because of a sanctioning body, that sanctioning ends the first Tuesday of September. So the races have never gone farther into September because of losing that sanctioning. Don't mean we can't have local races. We try to work with some of the other tracks in the state. Gillette puts on a great big 3-day race. Sheridan is open now. They have a 2-day race. So we try to schedule around them. But we are looking at other venues as maybe even some snowmobile races in the wintertime or something up there. It is a fantastic facility. We would like to explode it and make it more of what it is.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Councilman Powell.
Mr. Nash, all of us up here know all too well how difficult it is to please everyone.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure you're aware that there have been some complaints lodged and some things said about your operation of other racetracks. Without getting into excruciating detail, in fact, we have another speaker coming up after you. Would you care to say anything about some of those complaints or commitments you have made to make sure that this is a quality operation and that those kind of complaints will be rare?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that opportunity. We ran Valentine Speedway for 5 years. We were more car count than any racetrack in the state of Wyoming. That is not my count that I'm telling you. That is the count that is registered by every track. We took a racetrack that had roughly 100 cars showing up in a season. Our last season was 809 cars, which was 100 cars more than Casper had. We beat Gillette by 110 cars. For the season, they had their 3-day race after that, which they had 120 cars, which means they beat us by 10 cars. We have paid out as much money as anybody else in the state and more. We've had sprint cars show up from 7 states and 2 Canadian provinces. Right now, we have promoters calling us. We're not calling them. I don't know how to say this other than apparently we did something right because they're calling us and want to come to us. We've had a racer that actually ended up being the national champ in the Mod 4 class that raced in Minnesota Friday night, would change the gears in his car, drive to our track Saturday so he could race, we would pay him immediately in cash money as soon as he won the race. The other races were still going on, so he could leave and get back to Minnesota so he could race again the next day. That's how dedicated he was. Anytime you want to see any figures or anything, sir, we are wide open and more than happy to share anything with anybody.
One more?
Yeah.
Mr. Nash, would you give us just your frank assessment of our Speedway as a facility? And how well you think you'll be able to achieve your goals given its strengths and weaknesses?
Sir, it is the premier facility in the state. The lighting is fantastic. You can ask any driver who's been on that track. It's like you're driving in daylight. Thanks to the 1 cent sales tax, you just got new bleachers. This is the problem. Spectators is what pays the bills. The racers are your stars, but the racers don't pay the bills. The racers want money to race. So if we don't have the spectators, we can't get them. It's, I don't know what to tell you. You guys know this. It is advertising. We have already contacted the the Natrona County Tourism Board. They have said they will help us with the advertising. We got over $50,000 worth of advertising from Converse County for advertising only. It's all you're allowed to do with it through the tourism board there. The first year we had the track, I think they gave us $20,000. Progressively every year it's gone down because of economy. It worked. We had packed houses. We had as many as 2,000 spectators on a track and a facility that could hold about 1,500. I physically myself went on the hill, took the grader and made 4 more tiers for spectators to park on because we grew that much. If we can do to Casper what we did in Glen Rock, I don't know where the limit is. I honestly don't. I know the potential is there. I will give you my heart and soul.
Thank you. I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman.
So you said something that really rang my bell. And that is that if we want to see your books and records and show us where the money's going and everything's being done, you'll show it to us. You meant that, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Our
books are wide open.
I wish more people we do business with would do that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Nash.
Anything else?
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time, John Earhart, who asked to speak, please come forward. John Earhart. Okay. Discussion. Chris, or sorry, Councilman Welsh.
That's just fine.
Sorry, it's a little more formal up here.
I'm one of the ones that heard from people and asked to have this pulled off. Clearly, I'm not the only one, but and the information that I heard was some of the questions that Bob had alluded to, and then I talked to the former police chief in Glen Rock, and he reported that there was no problem with the operation of Valentine Speedway, and that it was that when the races were going, it was packed, and that was the biggest venue in town, it seemed to him. Since he had no problems there, can only assume that it doesn't spill over into the city. So when I had it pulled off, it wasn't to stop Mr. Nash from doing it. I just wanted to hear some of these questions, and I'm satisfied. So,
Councilman Laird.
I was a race fan since I was a little boy, and my dad used to take me. So I'm really happy you're doing this. I think you're a man of your word, and I have a long memory, so I'm going to vote for you. Thank you. All right. I don't know that I'll go that far, but I'll.
Were they horse-drawn cars?
Yeah, they're horse-drawn. They were then. They were then.
Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, I've seen a lot of these lease agreements brought before council, and I really think this is an issue where we have a responsibility for oversight, but not for delving into the details of the decision-making process. In my experience, when staff have gone through this process, they have done it diligently and thoroughly, and the outcome has almost always been positive. So I realize that some people are unhappy with this decision, but I just want to express my trust in our staff to make a good decision.
Councilman Hopkins.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys. First of all, doing a flat track race, I grew up many, many years ago. I used to race against a guy by the name of Timmy Oler here in town. Never beat him, but he was a very good bike rider. But I'm really looking forward to seeing flat track. It's fun.
Thank you. Are there any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, guys.
Council will now discuss the resolution for the consensus funds. Because this is not on the consent agenda, it will be open for discussion by council. Please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution approving the proposed project application for the reallocation of 2015-2016 county consensus funding.
Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Powell, seconded by Councilman Johnson. City Manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. The proposal for you this evening to consider is with regard to the direction that you gave a couple weeks ago, informally in a work session, to prepare an application to the state of Wyoming with regard to the use of consensus funds that included not only projects for other communities in our county, but also projects that the city of Casper ultimately directed staff to follow up on, and that is namely seats at the event center, the lower bowl, metal detectors, ADA improvements at the event center, the ice plant replacement at the ice arena, and radio tower upgrades on Casper Mountain. The council also directed that pursuant to the agreement with our partner agencies, we could move forward and submit the application. In the interim period between this point and then, there has been some decision-making that has occurred that does affect and impact the application ultimately that the council would support and submit, and most specifically removes a couple of the projects that council had previously informally supported. And those projects are namely the improvements at the event center and the improvements at the ice arena. Pursuant to that discrepancy, staff is in need of direction if council would like to alter its course and amend the proposal that you have in front of you this evening to either reflect what it is that the county commission has adopted or to reflect a different proposal. And so staff seeks that direction this evening and would ask for your questions that you might have pursuant to this request.
So we need to give city manager direction and city staff direction of what we need to do as far as this consensus funding comes. And so I'll open it up to discussion to see where we want to go as a council. Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor. With your indulgence, this may take a couple minutes.
Go ahead.
The issue in front of us is whether some of the consensus funds should be spent to fix a problem that we unintentionally created. The event center was built in the early 80s. I wasn't here at the time. I was up in Billings. But it was built by some far-sighted people sitting in these very seats. And it has been a facility that has generated a lot of activity in Casper, and activity means dollars spent at our retail establishments and our hotels and tax money for the city. As a 30-plus-year-old facility, it was necessary for the city to make a number of improvements to the event center over the last 10 years, many of whom have gone under the radar. We have replaced the roof, we've replaced the windows, we've updated the heating and cooling system, we've updated the lighting. We spent a fair amount of money on the event center, and it is now essentially a new facility. that has been rebuilt, and we should all feel good about that. The last thing that needed to be done was replacing the seats. The seats were 30 years old. I don't know how many of you are still sitting in couches and recliners that are 30 years old. I'm not. I know I'm not. Things break down and they need to be replaced. So in 2013, I believe it was, we voted to spend $1 million to replace the seats. I think that was the right thing to do to finish the project. What we weren't told and what we found out after the fact is that seat designs have changed over the past 30, 35 years, and the person who installed them actually admitted to us after the fact that they knew that you could not possibly put the same number of seats in the event center as we had originally installed, given those seat design changes. And so we started to hear, after we spent this $1 million, I was waiting for people to say, thank you, we love the new seats. Well, that's not what we heard. We started hearing complaints. At first, I didn't take them seriously. I thought, we put the seats in the same holes that the old seats were in. They're fine. You're just complaining for no reason. Well, it gradually dawned on me and a lot of other people that that was not the case. And we have a serious problem with these seats. And we now have, I think, 15, 20 pages of complaints about these seats. And anybody in marketing knows that if you get a written complaint about something, there's 10, maybe 20 other people that have the same complaint that never bothered to weigh in on it. So there's a lot of discontent. You hear in the streets all the time. I went to the event center and I was uncomfortable the whole time. And what's happening is people aren't coming back. And we don't have the kind of population where we can get away with that. We have to have return visits. And when people leave a facility and say, I'm never coming back to this place, it hurts us. And our economic future is, to some extent, tied to the success of the event center. And I feel like we put Spectrum in a very unfair spot by signing a contract with them where they had incentives to fill the event center, and they're trying, but how can they fill the event center under these circumstances? The money that we're proposing to use for this is called consensus money. It can only be used for projects such as this. We had an editorial in the paper that said, why would you spend money on the seats during an economic downturn? Well, there's a complete misunderstanding there. This money cannot be used on city operations. It can only be used for projects such as this. And we will have very few opportunities in the future to address this problem if we don't address it now. And so none of us up here wants to spend money on new seats at the event center. That I guarantee you. And we are all, I certainly feel a sense of responsibility that we let this happen. How we should have known this, I have no idea, but we didn't catch it, and it happened. And so, and I would also like to point out to people that the number one goal in our strategic plan that this council adopted is the maintenance of our assets. And this is one of our key assets. And it is never going to be successful, in my opinion, until we address this problem. There are many other things I would like to spend money on that would be cooler and that would be probably greater appreciated by some members of the community. But in my opinion, we simply have to do this. And whether the county commissioners agree or not, that's up to them. We thought we had an agreement with them. Apparently we didn't. And this is about the city making these decisions, us up here, not another governmental body. And so we have a responsibility, in my opinion, to stiffen our spines and say, no, this is what we decided that we wanted to spend this money on, and this is what we're going to do. And I think we just dig our heels in and say, this is it, my opinion.
Thank you. Councilman Laird and then Councilman Hopkins.
So, I went to the Jersey Boys Sunday night, and it was fantastic. But I'll tell you, those seats are bad. And I got a couple emails that said, well, we were sitting behind you. We noticed you were down there. We were going to come and talk to you, but we didn't. And then we were going to leave at halftime of the Jersey Boys, but it was so good we stayed. But we sure want you to know we don't like these seats. And they're a problem. But they're new looking and they cost $1 million and all this stuff. But Councilman Powell, you should have been a lawyer. That was really a good rendition. You're swaying me a little bit on this. I would vote for the seats if I could be sure exactly on the use of this money, that we can't use it for anything else. It's kind of like this parking study we're doing. It costs $80,000, although $75,000 is paid by a grant. If we didn't use the money, we'd lose the money. It costs us about $5,000. So I thought, okay, I think Councilman Powell probably knows exactly what they're going to say because he's seen 2 or 3 or 4 of them, him and Councilman Hopkins both. So I figured, okay, do a parking study. It's only going to cost us $5,000, but it does get lost in the translation when the public hears it's an $80,000 deal. But it doesn't cost us that much. So now what I'm hearing is maybe we can use this is it $650,000, Mr. Manager? Is that what they want? Right. For seats and for security devices and all of that. What we did do, though, they had all these seats installed, and we all went up and sat in the seats, and the one seat that was great, we all loved it. You sit there, it's like it's better than what you have at home sometimes. You put a drink right there, get right to it. If they're all like that, I think our people will really love those seats. So I'm thinking favorably about this, Mr. Manager, as long as this money thing, and I have no reason to doubt Councilman Powell on this. He's been the mayor, he understands these things. And it's got our citizens have to understand this, though, because in these times they're not buying new seats. However they're old their seats are, they're keeping their old furniture. So if it's really and truly money that you can't squeeze in another place where we really need it, then I'm looking positively at it. And so I'd like you to make a comment about it.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Laird, that is in fact the case. Since this program's inception, I am not aware of any concession that has allowed a community to use the funds for operational gaps or deficits. And the rules do not support that type of allocation.
Well, and you think we should put the new seats in, don't you? The staff of this.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, that is staff's recommendation. On the lower bowl only. Right.
Thank you. Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I too was sitting in one of these seats when we made the initial vote, and I must admit I think we made a mistake. I think we can do what we're proposing to do with the $600,000 and change, and I think we can help to increase the revenue for the event center. We've got a contractor in there who's done a fantastic job. They've gotten a lot more sponsorship. The place is operating well, as near as I can tell. I did go to the Jersey Boys concert the other night, and I can tell you that was a better rendition of that and better put together than what I saw in Denver about a year ago. It was just fantastic. But walking in and out, anybody that knew my name said, why don't you just buckle yourself in that seat and stay there? And that's being facetious. But they're not very comfortable. We've got to do something about it. So I thank you for your comments, Charlie, and I will support the resolution not to support the county's proposition.
Councilwoman Huckabee.
I also am going to support not supporting the county's resolution, but for an entirely different reason. I think that I agree that those seats are awful and they need to be replaced. But included in that cost are also upgrades to ADA improvements. And this body came together and had strategic planning, and public safety was one of our touchstones. And to me, making improvements to the facility that are going to improve public safety for people with disabilities is important to me, and that's why I will support this.
Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Some of this might sound contradictory to what I've said in the past. I think I've made it clear I'm not in support of getting the new seats at the event center. I don't think the timing's right. And while we can't spend the money on operational deficit, we also have roofs that need repaired. We also have those kinds of things where it could go to. I do support the ADA improvements and the metal detector equipment so that people can get in and out of there quicker. I understand the frustration of having to be checked going into a building, but guess what, folks, get used to it because that's the world we live in. But I support not going along with the county's proposal because this 9-person body should be the one that decides whether we all agree or not what happens and what is best for the people of the city of Casper, not the county. And if not, when they make it, from my understanding and the way it's been characterized to me, it was just an arbitrary decision and we didn't even hear an explanation on. And so, you know, I think that were we to make a decision that affected the county and the county commission without giving them the courtesy of a phone call, there would probably be some ire on their side too. So I don't support the county's proposal and would urge that the city moves forward with a different type.
One more comment. I think that we need to clear up, Carter. We're not redoing every seat in the event center. It's in the Horseshoe Bowl is what has been proposed. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
And so we're going to do that if we pass that and see how the public accepts that, and then comes a time where we may redo the rest of the seats, as I understand it, in the future, if everything does well. But right now, the only thing that they've asked for is that bowl, and I think Jesse had proposed it really got us going on that, where we're not looking at the whole event center, and I think that's a good idea that you had.
Thanks. Any other discussion? So I think to really look at and sum up that this 9-person body stands together as Councilman Walsh had said, that it's important for us to be able to make that decision, what we can do with those consensus funds, to be able to do that, and I agree wholeheartedly for that as well. So I will also be voting against it as well tonight. Is that a good enough direction, or do you need something a little bit more concrete?
Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, I think it is important to make sure that let me say this if I could. I'm sorry. Let me to back up. With respect to council's direction is clear, I think, with regard to what appears to be the passage you're taking here. I think the outcome will likely be that council's effectively vetoing the completion of all of the projects that have been identified in order to come to the consensus that the entities came to in the informal meeting that council prepared me for with direction from a few weeks ago. And so I think what will happen as a matter of course and understanding for the council is that you're effectively vetoing the proposition that the county used their veto to create, and until that consensus can be had again, the application will be put in abeyance, and additional negotiation will need to take place in order to come to the original consensus that was brought about. Is that?
Yep. Is that clear with everybody? As the mud. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councilman Walsh.
What timelines do we have on this? Are we going to expire on an opportunity here?
That's a fair question, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Walsh. There are a number of deadlines that can be met. The deadline that we're shooting for at this point is a December 14th application deadline. If that application deadline is not met, then we have other application deadlines that we can hit subsequently pursuant to that discussion process that I tried to weakly describe. Weakly as in not strongly describe.
And there'll be discussions on this tomorrow morning, right?
Correct, yes.
That's right. Okay, so we'll.
Councilman Powell and Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to make a very complicated discussion even more complicated,
Uh-oh.
this money was originally set aside for a contribution to a conference center that was built on the golf course, which we all know is no longer a viable option, or I shouldn't say it's no longer, it was not then a viable option due to unforeseen circumstances. But that was what it was originally set aside for, with full consensus from all of the bodies. Apparently, there was an agreement that if a conference center was not built, the money would go back into a pot that the communities could then divide up for other purposes. Coincidentally, almost bizarrely, there is now a new proposal for the possibility of a conference center. And if that comes to fruition, it is a near certainty that there would be some need to update infrastructure for that facility. Is any of this money, or is there an expiration date on the agreement that we put in place? i.e., would it be possible, if this was not approved, for the money to go back to its original purpose?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Powell, the answer is there was not an expiration date affixed to that agreement that the 5 mayors signed back in 2014. However, it does direct that those dollars be brought back to the discussion table to come to a consensus as to how those dollars should be spent. And so my response to that would be that consensus was derived a few weeks ago, and that result of the negotiation process was brought to your attention to get your endorsement and support, of which you gave informally, culminating in the formal step of this process tonight. Again, in the interim, however, despite the consensus that was come to a few weeks ago, the county commission issued their veto that put this upend in place, if you will, and hence the county proposal that you have in front of you this evening as represented by the spreadsheet I just sent around to you.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Councilman Hopkins.
This question for city manager. Just to refresh everybody's memory, how are the consensus funds allocated? Per capita basis or land area? Just give us a quick rundown on that.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Hopkins, the grand total of the dollars that have been given in tranches over the last 10 or 12 years have generally been available pursuant to budgetary allowance to do so. And when that allowance is in place, my understanding is that there has been population determinations to determine how much each county of the 23 counties in our state receive.
So with that in mind, the city being essentially the second largest city in the state, it would have been a bigger number for the city of Casper than anybody else in Toronto County.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Hopkins, if indeed the local consensus was that the dollars were divided on a per capita basis, that would be correct. But history would indicate that that has not been the guiding direction. And generally speaking, if I may, the city of Casper has been very, very generous with regard to the allocation that the city of Casper has received at the benefit of the rest of the agencies in the county.
Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't know how much time we want to spend on this, but just to follow up on what Councilman Hopkins has said, my calculations may be inaccurate here, but for example, the fixing of a water pipe to Edgerton and Mills roughly would amount to about $1,200 per capita
for those two communities as far as the amount of money that would be spent compared to their population. The event center would be about $12 per citizen of Casper. And we're being told that that's not an appropriate request.
Councilman Laird, then we'll start moving forward, guys.
Oh, just one last comment. The issue about some of these old agreements is legally they're not binding on newer councils. And we have several old agreements that have been made that people wanted to make last longer than the pyramids. But Wyoming law provides that new councils with new managers can declare those agreements null and void. We haven't done that yet. I'm hoping we'll start doing that because I don't think that we should be trying to bind councils in face of a Wyoming case that I refer to as the Mariano case that is already, the Supreme Court has already ruled you can't bind future councils by past council actions, at least most of the time.
Thank you. So just for clarification, before we vote, Mr. Napier, so we are be voting on the authorization of the mayor to sign the application for reallocation for the 15-16 consensus funds, correct?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you were effectively asking the council to adopt the resolution as prepared with no amendments, and that would be the direction we would move forward with.
Okay.
As the allocation that we would like it to be.
Correct. Correct, yeah.
The yes vote is essentially for the seats.
To
Go ahead.
support the Casper Event Center improvements, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Mr. Councilman, as well as the ice plant improvements, the radio tower improvements.
So vote yes is just making sure we're clear.
It's inclusive of all those.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Does that make sense, Councilwoman? Okay.
So if we vote yes, we're vetoing the county. That's what you're saying. Thank you very much. Just wanted to make that clear to everybody.
Just want to make sure. Okay.
Kind of confusing up here.
Okay. So amendments. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
Back to the drawing board.
Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 9C1, a resolution to document the City of Casper's implementation of the provisions of Section 414H2 of the Internal Revenue Code regarding employer pickup of employee retirement contributions of to the Wyoming retirement system. Item 9C2, a resolution authorizing change order number 1 with Hedquist Construction, Inc. for a winter shutdown as part of the Robertson Road South Pathway Project. Item 9C3, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with HDR Engineering, Inc. for the wastewater treatment plant digester boiler installation project. Item 9C4, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with High Tech Communications, Inc. for the CATC Security Improvements Project. Item 9C5, a resolution authorizing a lease agreement with the St. Anthony Tri-Parish Catholic School for the use of the Casper Ice Arena. Item C6 is 4 items that deal with the closure of Grant Elementary School. Item 9C6A, a resolution authorizing the grant of a corrective quitclaim deed from the City of Casper, Wyoming to the Natrona County School District Number 1. Item 9C6B, a resolution accepting a dedication of the right-of-way for Oakcrest Avenue from the Natrona County School District Number 1. Item 9C6C, a resolution authorizing an amendment to a lease agreement between the City of Casper, Wyoming and Natrona County School District Number 1 for 5 parcels of city-owned property located adjacent to school sites. Item 9C6D, a resolution approving an access easement agreement between the City of Casper, Wyoming and Natrona County School District Number 1. Item 9C7, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the 2020 census local update of census addresses operation registration form. Item 9C8, a resolution approving a site plan for redevelopment and site improvements at 1301 Wilkins Circle, lots 9 and 10, Platte River Industrial Park Addition. Item 9C9, a resolution authorizing a lease between the City of Casper and Mountain Sports. Item 9C10, a resolution authorizing a lease agreement between the City of Casper and the Casper Mountain Ski Patrol for use of the Ski Patrol building at the Hogadon Basin Ski Area.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilwoman Huckabee. Any abstentions or nay votes? Councilwoman Huckabee. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. I apologize. Got that on the other side. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the consent minute action titles.
Item 10A1, authorizing the purchase of one new roll-off truck body from Ameritech Equipment Company for use by the Solid Waste Division of the Public Services Department. Item 10A2, authorizing the purchase of one new side-loading sanitation truck body from Ameritech Equipment Company for use by the Solid Waste Division of the Public Services Department. And item 10A3, rejecting all bids received for the purchase of one new front-loading sanitation truck body that was to be used in the Solid Waste Division of the Public Services Department.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda items just read.
So move. Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Morgan. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Now is the time that we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we ask the following. Please state your name and address. Direct all questions and comments to me, please. No personal attacks on staff or council will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. Questions posed by speakers may or may not be responded to by council members, and presentations will be limited to only 5 minutes, and the duplication of speakers will not be allowed, nor will time extensions be permitted. Anybody wants to come on up? Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Pro Tem.
So Pat Sweeney, 951 North Kimball. Couple of things tonight that on the consensus funding, I'd have to ask the city manager. My recollection is they're currently for the future, and I think also in this current biennium that we're in, the state doesn't allocate any new consensus funding because of the state the budget it is in. So if that's correct, this consensus funding that we're talking about, remember the word consensus, because that's what it's supposed to be about. We all of the entities, including the county, get together and sing Kumbaya and bless the projects. And I don't know if that's unanimous or just, the majority consensus of all the entities being the county, Mills, Barna, Edgerton, Midwest, Evansville. So, and I would also urge you, years ago the council had a not so good relationship with the county, and currently I think we do have a good working relationship with the county. No, I can't fit into those seats, most wide body, let alone, I'm surprised that, skinny people have issues with them. And I know Roger Walters, the commissioner of National Intercollegiate Rodeo Association, has had many issues with those seats being uncomfortable for the fans of CNFR. Now, I'll leave those comments at that. And I don't know how much is left in that pot, because those were pulled back from the conference center. The other issue is the conference center. I was able to fit a couple of minutes to listen to part of the presentation on the conference center at your work session. And I ask and urge I'm not against a conference center. But it's a fairy tale to think that a private investor is going to come in and plop down $70 million on this deal. And it's a fairy tale to think in the current, just drove in from attending and watching Revenue Committee go through the issues of trying to come up with different funds for the state. And it's a fairy tale, I believe, to think that the Business Council and the SLIB Board are going to continue to be a major player. I think it's also interesting that the SAG report was quoted by these new consultants as the gospel on conferences, when we disputed many of the operators at the time when the SAG report came out, ordered through the city with DDA's help and others on funding it. We provided some of the data. The data is flawed on what conferences can come to town. We can prove that. But nobody wants to talk to an old dog operator that's been in the trenches. That is a huge mistake, or current operators. Regency Hotels operates 70-some hotels, many large conference centers, much larger than the Ram Coda has here. So be cautious. Lastly, I really feel strongly, but support the actions of the city manager. I'm not happy about it. But I want to just take a second to thank Steve Schultz for his service. 19 years here at the city of Casper with our PD, and 6, 7, 8 years with the sheriff's office here, our county. So I sometimes outside blood, new blood, but I think he did a remarkable job in stabilizing a situation and continues to serve our city. And red light. But I urge you to continue to support him as far as he wants to stay, or the new chief will have him. But I think a lot of it's the choice is his, and I just want to thank Steve, the interim chief, for what he's done for our city.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a comment. Mr. Legislator, so now I'm going to jump into your business, okay? There's a nightmare going on down there in the legislature, and one part of the nightmare I ask you to vote against is don't tax our people's food. So that's something you can vote on. I think it's terrible to think about taxing food. So the other thing I don't want you to do is pass any of those liens where some electrical company can put a lien on somebody's house and potentially get their house because they weren't able to pay their electrical bill. There's some things from WHAM coming down that they're going to recommend to you, and it all has to do with taxing poor people. So I want you to really look carefully at that. Spend more of your energy on what this big problem is that you're facing down there. We're going to take care of the city of Casper. And I guarantee you that we'll do a good job at it. And I ask you to do as good a job down in the legislature as we do here. And Steve Schultz is one hell of a guy. And we have a new manager, and he made a decision, and we all support his decision because that is his decision by law. He's the one that picks the police chief, and we're the ones who support him. But don't tax food, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll leave that alone so I can head to Bar Nuns. But
I just want to say I appreciate your comments all the way around, Mr. Sweeney. I'm right
Thank
there with you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pacheco.
Good evening.
Tim, esteemed council members, I'm Connie Thompson at 6224 Gothberg Road in Casper, and I am the chair of the Casper Historic Preservation Commission. At the last work session, you guys didn't have enough time for us to say anything, so I thought I would jump in now. I would like to express our concern as a commission that we believe Site 1 is not appropriate. The commission was established in 1987-88 to stop the destruction of our historic buildings. And we sent out a letter to each one of you about a week ago, and I'm sure that that work session you did not have full time to read our letter. It was a couple pages. But we are very concerned that we don't want to lose any more buildings. There have been people who've applied to purchase these. We would like to see the small business people have that opportunity to extend and help the city grow because of their small businesses. And we also have historical integrity right beside them, across the street, in the vicinity with the OYD. And especially since we have became a national downtown historic district, and with the ribbon cutting and all of that, we're just very proud of what we have, and we would like to impress upon you to think long and hard about losing any more of our historical buildings. They're an extreme asset to Casper, and I even saw something on TV, and it was just a news flash, but when they did it, they showed the old buildings of Casper, and I'm going, oh my gosh, where's that at? It was us. And so it's getting out there, and people are starting to notice it with tourism and all that. We just want to express our concern. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
I think so. Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. My name is Vivian Meek. I live at 765 West 20th Street here in Casper. I do happen to be a member of the Casper Historic Preservation Commission. I am also a small business owner of one shop here in town, and by May I will have 2 shops here in town. And the second shop is part of a historical building, and we are going to be hopefully bringing back the history in that shop in the building. My concerns tonight are, I read in the paper about a meeting Monday morning between the Casper Convention and Visitor Bureau, the DDA, the Amico Board, etc., that about the convention center. My concern is that the 3 people who put in bids and have a big stake in the outcome of this were probably not invited to this meeting, and so therefore we're not able to have any input in it. And I was concerned that if there was no new information discussed, why was the date put back from December 12th to December 19th? And does this mean that those bids are now null and void, that those 3 businesses put in with good faith to the city that if they got them in by October 20th, that there would be a decision and that they would have a yes or no answer by December 14th, which is why I thought we were going to have the public meeting on December 12th, so that, you know, we could come up with a decision, yay or nay, whether we were going to go forth with the bids or if we were going to table the whole thing to find out what was going to happen with the convention center. And I am for the convention center. I am not for Site 1, just to let you know on that. Then the other thing is they discussed the structure of the public meeting. Now, if no new information was discussed, that was not discussed at the work session, what the structure of the public meeting will be. If they discussed that, did they come to a decision? And if so, what is that decision, so that the rest of us know what the structure of the meeting is, so that we can be prepared properly to give our presentations? And Other than that, I agree with Connie that we need to think about rehabilitation, rebuilding, preservation. I read the 156th page of the 20-year Greater Casper Comprehension Plan. Historic preservation is mentioned all over it. Enhancing the river, building restaurants, cafes, making the river a place to be is also mentioned all over it. So I'm in favor of Site 2, just to let you know.
Great.
Any questions to me or any comments?
Thank you so much for coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I guess, yeah, please.
I think the question deserves an answer.
Oh.
There is no problem with the deadline, is what we were told by the city manager. The 19th, the hearing on the 19th will take place prior to the expiration of the bid.
Oh, good.
Otherwise, it would not have been delayed. So
Okay.
we will, in all likelihood, be asked to make a decision following the public hearing
Okay,
regarding all of this, but there was no intent to basically delay the hearing until after the.
okay. That's good. It gives us all another week to do it. Will they publicly say what the structure is going to be? So that I know, I've never spoke at a public meeting before, so I really don't know, will it be put in the paper, something that this will be, you have 5 minutes to talk, or you can do this, or you can do that, or will that be announced publicly?
I think that's for the mayor to decide what the rules will be. If I
Yeah.
may, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, please.
I doubt
Okay.
there'll be any deviation from our normal procedure.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're tuned up. It's probably going to be just like tonight. That's what
Okay, I'll have 5 minutes, get my point across and get it over.
I'd like to make a comment. I think that we do have the authority to continue those bids with the consent of the three bidders
Okay,
without expiring. And this is a problem that you have in these kind of matters where people come up, you don't make a final decision, and somebody comes in and says, look at this project, because if in spite of what Mr. Sweeney says, if the fairy tale really happens and somebody comes in and says, we have the $70 million to put in the hotel and the convention center, then we have to look at that.
right.
And then we have to look at what kind of shape the buildings are in, which we're being told what kind of shape they're in by the contractor that's over there right now. And so all of these things are very complicated. And it's just not, I think everybody here likes the historical preservation idea. But yet, if you have a hotel and a conference center that comes downtown, it's financed by private people, because the city isn't going to pay for this. Just so you know, if there's a hotel or a conference center, some private person would have to come in, wave its magic wand, and the fairy tale happens, and I think that's a big thing we have to look at. So when we're trying to balance all of that off, we try to be as fair as we can to everybody.
Okay.
And,
You do know 2 of those buildings are eligible for the National Register
well,
and are contributing to the historic downtown district.
and I understand but they haven't been declared historical buildings.
They have.
They're not on the
declared yet.
register, so.
But they are
So
eligible.
if they were on the register, that would be a little different situation. But that isn't the question. That isn't the issue. The issue is what is the biggest, best for Casper, Wyoming? I'll tell you, that's gonna be my decision, whatever it is. And I don't know what it is.
Right.
But I've been in every one of those buildings since I've been a little boy. So it was interesting for me. In fact, I went over there today to see the 2 garages that Mr. Schmidt is getting, when he thought he was only gonna get one. Well, he's gonna get 2.
Right.
And then you have the Nolan building, but if you go over there and look yourself, you will see that this is a very expensive project. And so where does this money come from? We have to decide. We have to decide who the best persons are, whether they can even afford this kind of a project, because we're not going to pay for it.
Well,
The taxpayers aren't going to pay for it. So it isn't just you buy a building and then you move in it. You've got to rewire. You've got to do all kinds of things, which people are telling me is going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I know people will be ready. but it just isn't easy to say, you just go in there and start tomorrow.
Well, no, and I'm sure that the people who put in the bids for the 2 buildings are expecting the work that they're going to have to do on them.
And we haven't got to that point yet, and I guess that our point is we want to do the very best we can with that land, because you can't do it twice.
Right.
And for me, I don't speak for the rest of the council, but nothing's burning a hole in my pocket yet. I've only
Okay.
been on the council 7 months. I want to hear all the best proposals, but I guarantee you one thing I won't do. I won't keep letting some organization drag this on and on and on without performance.
Okay.
People
And
have
I
to be
agree, but I
accountable.
would also
People
like
have to be
see-
accountable.
Yeah, I'd like to see the Nolan Chevrolet totally uncovered to where we can really look at it and see, is it salvageable or it has too much damage done to
You
it?
can
And
see
at
it
this
now.
point, I don't believe that we can do that
You can
until we
go
have
see
it
it.
totally
Go
uncovered.
see it tomorrow. Go see it. It's open.
Well, I drove by it this evening. Now, they don't have it totally uncovered yet.
Well, they have it uncovered substantially, and they have the garages uncovered. I went over there this afternoon.
Okay.
And they're going to have it open for people, I think, tomorrow to go see.
Oh, are they?
And I guess the manager can elucidate on that, not hallucinate on that, but tell you. But I personally talked to the contractor. I personally talked to the contractor, got his opinions on all those buildings. And I'm not going to discuss those here tonight, but I've heard what he said. And so
Okay.
those kind of things influence us as to what we do, but there's so much information you're not aware of or privy to yet that it makes it hard for us to explain to our citizens. But I think that best that we can tell you is we're going to take the hardest look at this deal and do the best job we can with it.
Okay, and as a commission member, I would hope that you guys would rely on us and our expertise and knowledge on historic preservation to help you make that decision.
Absolutely. In fact, I have a building in downtown Casper that was built in 1907, and I wouldn't want to see anything hurt that building, because my ghost that lives upstairs would be upset as well.
Thank you so much for coming up, and we appreciate that.
Yes.
Anybody else? Hello, sir.
Dale Zimmerly, 3035 Bel Air Drive. Well, Christmas isn't far off, and so we brought some Christmas bags for you guys this year.
Is it under $200, Mr. Zimmerly? Is it 250? Oh, just
Close.
making sure.
And I just want to say something about why giving happens at Christmas. It's because God gave the greatest gift of all, His Son Jesus, so that I know I'll spend eternity with Him, and that's what giving's about. And also, I've been doing some research in the Bible, and I don't know if each one of you council members know, but you are here because God put you here. Even if you don't think so, you're here because God put you here. And thank you for what you do. And Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Dale.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerly. Thank you.
I tease about that, and being on council is not always easy, and you certainly get your share of getting punched in the chops a little bit every once in a while, and so we appreciate that, and we do try to do our best, so thank you. Appreciate it, Dale. Anybody else?
Dennis is here.
Mr. Steensland.
Dennis Steensland, 533 South Washington. I must be the only one here that doesn't know what the county proposal was. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, I guess. I would like to know what the lower bowl seats consist of, how many, how big of seats, and why you can't go to a concert or something for 3 hours and tolerate sitting in a seat that's a little tight. It's a lot of money to put out. If that's the only place you can spend it, go ahead and spend it. If it increases their potential to make us some money, that's a good thing. But which seats are you, I like Jesse's proposal. Which seats are you going to?
The lower bowl.
And I don't understand what the lower bowl is, right?
So Mr. Manager, would you please explain what the lower bowl would entail?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. The lower bowl is effectively the lower level of seating that extends from the floor up toward the concourse. Anything above the concourse, so to speak, would be what I would consider upper bowl and would not be a part of this equation.
So the middle section, as you look at most stages, would go up, what, roughly 8 or 10 rows of seats? Is that all? Or am I way off base on this?
You're kind of off base, but I wish we had a picture to show you, because I would.
Yeah, I do too.
But it's the back of the event center. They move the stage forward. And the back of the the center is in the shape of a bowl, kind of a horseshoe shape.
Yes, I've been there.
And so now, how far up does this go, Jesse? Do you remember how many?
I don't know how many rows, exactly.
Do we,
Pro Tem, I think the number that Mr. Steenson
Yeah.
might be interested in is it's about 3,000 of us.
thank you, that was going to ask the city manager.
Seats out of how many currently is there?
A little under 9, isn't it?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, it's about 9,500 seats total,
Total 9,500 seats.
roughly.
So about replacement of about 3,000 is what we're. A third of the seats. Yeah, yeah.
And who's going to monitor this to see that once we do this, that they present a lot more profits, that they can't, they signed the contract. Dallas told me about contracts last time, so they knew the seats they had then. So anyway, I just seem like if that's the only place you can spend that kind of money, more power to us and get it done. And I would like to, Pat Sweeney's comments with Steve Schultz, I second those completely.
Excuse me, there's the picture. So it's that back end.
So it's everything,
Can you point that out for us?
the blue line down, or blue line to the,
Yeah.
and I think you've got to give Jesse Morgan credit for that.
I did.
Oh, yeah.
I know you did. And I can give him credit too, so.
I'm ahead of you, Dennis, on this. But I can tell you,
You should be, you've got all the information.
when I got out of there, you couldn't believe the number of people said you gotta give better seats. I'm kind of like you. I'm old fashioned in a way. I hate to throw away anything good. But the lessons that the guys that own the movie theaters, they'll tell you, there used to be 1,200 seats in the American, now there's under 200. And they make more money. The seats, people buy the seats, the kind that you hit the button and they fold out and all that. And that's what the trend is across the country. Less seats, better seats, and more money. And I hope that happens for us. Probably won't because we're the city, but we're trying.
And I'm hoping you've got them sold to somebody for a small pittance of money. So anyway, Steve Schultz, I supported him. I'm not a fan of double dipper people as far as government goes. That's kind of the way I look at the new police chief. I wish him well. I hope he does well. I would imagine he comes with a retirement and benefit package from his last employment. He's going to make a pretty good salary here, and I wish him well. But I do agree with Steve Schultz, and I guess that's it. It's kind of hard to follow some of these people. It's hard to get up behind Pat Sweeney. The two girls did a good job. That's almost a no-win situation from what I can see.
You're always very eloquent, Mr. Steensland, when you come up.
No, I'm not eloquent at all, I'm sure of that.
Maybe one of these days you'll be sitting up here.
No, I already told Dallas that. I'm not interested in that. I lost my train of thought. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Steensland. Good to see you. Anybody else? Mr. Conti, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, my name is William Conte. I live at 1723 South Cedar Street here in Casper. I would like to ask you about the current disposition of the old livery stable. My understanding is that Site 1 has been now parceled out into 3 separate lots, the K-Lark's Gym, the old livery stable, and the old Milo's Toyota. Am I correct in that you are considering proposals for all three now of those venues. Am I also correct in that there have been?
Only two, Mr. Conti, I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Only two sites.
There are only two sites?
Yeah.
Yes, but is the old livery?
Well, three,
Two proposals.
two proposals, I apologize, two proposals.
For two
Yes,
sites.
is
Yeah.
the old, has anyone made any proposal on the old livery stable as of yet?
Mrs. Becker, do we know? No?
Didn't the Cupcake Factory want the delivery stable?
No, I believe it was on the corner of Midwest, the smaller.
Thinking of the wrong place.
So, but nothing current. Okay, so nothing current right now, Mr. Conti.
I wanted to ask the council to consider the possibility of thinking differently about the old livery stable. Let me say that I wholeheartedly endorse the efforts of the Historic Preservation Society to maintain the character of downtown Casper and resist the construction of a convention center at that particular site. We have the David Street Station. What I believe that we need downtown is an indoor equivalent of the David Street Station, a gathering place for artists, poets, musicians, actors, and performers. I hold a PhD in theater from the City University of New York, and I am the instructor of theater history and literature at Casper College. Before coming to Casper, I ran theaters in New York City in storefronts and in various venues. I have experience in translating abandoned venues into theatrical spaces. I'm asking the City Council to consider thinking differently about this space and to consider the possibility of creating a municipal theater that the city would sponsor and which would be a home for the many young artists that are coming into Casper and that are working in Casper now, many of whom graduate from Casper College and remain in Casper for opportunities to continue to work and perform here. Casper College Theater Department has now abbreviated its season. They are no longer performing summer musicals. The Stage 3 Community Theater does not perform in the summer. We have an opportunity as a community to create a vibrant theatrical performance situation here that will be a benefit and a boon to the entire community. All of these businesses, the restaurants, the bars, the venues downtown will benefit from the presence of a performing arts venue. And I don't know what it would take to do that, but I want to hold that out to you because I believe it is possible. If you've seen the Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland movie, you know that if there is a barn, there is a play that is screaming to be performed in it. I am the artistic director also of a company called the Theater of the Poor, and what we've done in Casper since we've been performing here is creating works of art from nothing in these found spaces, which is what they are called. We performed T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland in 2016 in the storefront at the Downtown Grill. And this summer in August, we created a production of Prometheus in the back lot of the Stage 3 Community Theater that coincided with a total eclipse of the sun. And we did it with nothing. This will cost the city nothing. We have the energy and the will and the artistic desire in this community to create something very special here. And all we would need is the key, or at least a way forward in working with the city. I was not prepared to speak to you tonight, otherwise I would have bothered to shave. But I heard that this was the conversation. I wanted to avail myself of the opportunity to address you, to introduce myself to you, and to offer my services to the city as one who would be willing to work with you to coordinate this endeavor. It would preserve the building. It would create a vibrant artistic scene. It would be a benefit to all of us. And that's all I have to say. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Conti? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Okay, at this time, we ask council members to bring forward any relevant concerns or any items of interest or things that they've gone on for the last week. So, Councilman Hopkins.
I don't think I have anything tonight, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councilman Walsh?
No, I don't have anything. We've got an executive session, so I'd just assume be very brief.
Thank you. Councilman Pell?
Same from me, Your Honor, nothing this evening.
Great. Councilman Huckabee?
I'm gonna.
Councilwoman?
I want to echo that I agree that we put our city manager in a position to make choices and do his job and support him. That being said, I do want to thank Interim Chief Schultz for all the work that he did. He came into a situation that he inherited and stepped up, and I know for me, I worked with him on several occasions on things that were important to me, and I really appreciate you taking the time and addressing those things for all of us in this community. So thank you.
Councilman Laird.
Okay, Mr. Manager, here's my request. Now that you've balanced the budget, I want to build a new police station. And I don't know, I want to somehow get it going in front of the council. I want to know from the police department where they think a good location would be, city staff where a good location would be. I want to find out how much it's going to cost and how we're going to fund it. And I'd like to have it built by the end of the year. But I know you can't do that one. But it's really important that we do this. It's really important that we do this. Steve Schultz, I know you're a warrior. I know you're smart. I know you've given some of your best years to the city of Casper. And I know that you understand the process where you have a chance and something else happens. And I know you're going to survive all that because of all the other qualities you have, because you're indeed a gentleman as well. So thank you. Thank you for your service, your Miss Interim, and your 20 years of service practically to the city. I wish you the very best in whatever you do. And lastly, if you guys don't want your fiddle faddle, I'll buy it from you, because it's really good.
Councilman Johnson.
Just a couple things. I've had several people come to me about issue with food trucks downtown. So I think we should have a work session topic, at least to be informed on how that's regulated by us, if it is at all. But I've had several people come to me with concerns, so I think we should probably discuss that. I may or may not be at the next meeting, the work session. It's the first night of Hanukkah, so if I do come, I'll probably have to leave early. So I may or may not be there. I'll let you know for sure, though.
Thank you. Councilman Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I've been waiting for this since November 7th, the last time I was able to go counsel around the table. Since then, I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, where the National League of Cities all met, and what that is elected officials from around the nation meet, gather, present ideas, also host workshops, basically to make us better leaders. And while doing that, I spoke to a councilman from a small town in Washington, and when you see these ideas, you always have to say, well, will that work in Casper? Is it a bad idea or a good idea? Or how can we make it, something to fit Casper? And one of the ideas that this gentleman implemented in their city was for anyone 18 and under, it was free to ride on their public transit system. And there's a similar sized city as this, but also in using that pass, it also is a free pass, that transit pass, to get into public recreation areas, such as our Casper Rec Center, pools, and things like that. So it keeps them out of trouble when they're out of school. It keeps them out of trouble and occupied during the summertime. And I thought that was a great idea, and one that we might be able to entertain here. There was also, earlier in the year, Councilman Laird wanted to reach out to members of the public regarding, budget items. How are we going to spend the money? At the time, I thought that was a bad idea. That's why we were elected. There was a presentation that was given, and it was called Participatory Budgeting, PB budgeting. So basically, it gets community people in their area, and they have capital money on what they would like to invest in their area. It's something that's done widely in Brazil, and it's starting to spread around the United States, and municipalities are adopting that for the citizens to say, hey, look, this is what we need in our area, and this is maybe the $1 million that we'd like it to go towards. So I'm kind of I'm in your favor right now for that. I thought that was a good idea, and it's good community engagement too.
Thank you. I knew I was a man ahead of my time.
And speaking about that, you stole my thunder on the Hall of Justice thing, so I went on a ride-along just to kind of cut from this. And I know it was mentioned earlier in the year with VH and former Chief Wetzel about a new Hall of Justice area, and looking at the possibilities of a convention center. That might not fit in that area, I understand, but what could fit? So there's a lot of ideas, and a Hall of Justice might be one of them. A lot of people are hesitant towards a parking garage. What better way to give confidence in walking into a parking garage when you have police officers in and out of there day in and day out, 24 hours a day. A parking garage is something that's needed, and since we're on the subject of that particular property, when we were going to put those bids out there in May, the presentation that was given to council was to pretty much demolition entirely the Plains area. So that was going to be a parking lot. We get in there, there's another building on there, and it ends up being a historical building. So since then, a lot has changed. So I think we need to, as a council, hopefully have a meeting where we all can talk about what we see or what are the possibilities, or maybe even have staff or have the city manager go to department heads and say, hey, what are our needs for the city of Casper? Maybe you have a police chief that says, hey, this is our need, this is where we're operating in, and here are the challenges that we face day in and day out, being crammed in this tight quarter. So I'd like to see more ideas of how we could utilize that space. We've spent $6 million on fire departments in the last couple of years, and a couple more in the last, I think, 10 years. So, the fire department's getting plenty of new buildings. I think we're done after the east side one goes up. So right there's $6 million. I don't think we're going to build another $6 million lodge. So we've just arrived at having $12 million unallocated, and that's a whole year of 1 cent tax. So that's 1 year that we can think about, is it going to be a new parking garage? Is it going to be a new Hall of Justice Center? And where is that going to fit with our city-owned property, or are we going to acquire more property? So there's a lot of ideas out there. I hope council can possibly, or the mayor and vice, maybe see that, we need to look at all options and what we can do with this area, and how is it going to benefit Casper for years to come. I think residential is a key factor downtown. You need people downtown. That's what's going to sustain businesses. As Councilman Johnson talked about, food trucks is a huge issue. They found a loophole, and they're utilizing that loophole. They're not paying any money for parking spaces. I don't think that's entirely okay to utilize many parking spaces for a food truck, for example. I like the alley idea, and that's something that we could look into if the now interim fire chief can allow such a permit for that to be used, but a truck goes right along there. I don't see any problem in that. There's a whole lot of other items. I don't know if you guys have more time. It's been a while. I'm hungry.
You got a couple good, important ones you want to go over? That'd be great, Councilman.
Yeah, I guess the other one was Councilman Johnson was concerned about, people going in and out of our jailhouse, which is extremely expensive. There's a city outside of Chicago, and what they do, it's called a Way Out program. And basically what they do, they get people in and they say, hey, if you want to come in, we'll send you to rehab. That's zero cost to the city. All they have to do is get a police officer to drive them to that rehabilitation area. But the workshop that I attended was a high cost of those high users, a basically revolving door. But it's cut down substantially on people that were always in and out of jail for some sort of substance abuse. We spoke earlier that, funding a rehab facility isn't in the best interest of taxpayers. I agree with that to a certain degree. Mental health issues does impact communities, especially when there are tragic events like you see in Texas, for example, and that does impact all of us. So I think there's a fine line of what we can do and can't do, and I think it would be worth looking into. It took them 13 months to get everybody on board to send people to that rehab facility. They said, hey, look, if you have your drugs, your drug paraphernalia, bring it into a certain precinct, and we won't charge you with a felony right there. That was something that they had to work with the state and DA to see if that was even legal or not, and then you needed the judge to also sign off if they had a warrant to implement that warrant after that rehab program. So it's a lot of work. I don't know if people are interested in pursuing that or any fellow council members in helping me with that, but I think it's something that we might owe to people struggling with those issues. That's all I have for tonight.
Thanks, Councilman Morgan. I don't have a whole lot because we do have to get to another meeting here right afterwards, but we'll have a mayor commissioner meeting tomorrow morning that we will be talking about consensus funding, and I'll report back to the council as well on how that went. I have a meeting this morning, EDJP meeting this morning, and then I'll be meeting with the Youth Empowerment Council next Monday, staff, to plan our next youth town hall meeting in January. So that will be coming up. So, all right. So the next meetings of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, December 12th, 2017, in the council meeting room, and a regular council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, December 19th, 2017, in the council chambers. The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss litigation, and will only reconvene in order to re-adjourn this regular session.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Councilman Laird. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
Aye, motion passes.
Thank you.
We're good at passing that motion.